We are back with a Sunday night edition of the college football show. Is that what we're calling this?
Yeah,
Or I meant not football, not football.
the basketball show.
The
Yeah,
college basketball show. What am I doing?
yeah. Well, you
What
got to
am I
put your
doing?
you got a Carry On Arnold Lions jersey on, right?
Yes, my favorite NFL player. My favorite
Yep.
next round NIL guest of all time.
Yep. And it works out because your family is originally from Michigan. I
Yep.
think your dad and your mom big Lions fans, so it works out. Works out,
Yeah, I've been
right?
searching. I'd been searching for an NFL team, but I couldn't just pick one. Lance last year, when I began my hunt, said, "Why don't you just pick a team that has the best colors in your opinion, or something like that?" And I was like, "That is not how I work. That is not how I
No.
function." And I need a team that I have some sort of emotional attachment to. My family's always been Lions fans because we're from Michigan. And so I've watched them because of that. But I was like, I have to have some sort of emotional attachment to the team, a reason that I pull for them other than that's where I'm from, for me to actually be invested. And
It,
then the Lions drafted
enter.
Terry
Yeah,
on, and here I
right.
am.
That's right. Enter Terry On Arnold, and the rest
Yeah,
is history.
the rest is
His
history.
historic SEC basketball seasons ahead. Everyone's talking about 12 teams, 13 teams getting in this thing. But my takeaway from yesterday, before we do a complete mailbag show, and that's what we're going to do on Sunday night / Monday morning, whenever you watch this, was that first game at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, earliest game ever at Rupp Arena. 106-100 Kentucky, Florida. It was such a fantastic game. And then I look at the rest of the scores. Ole Miss beat Georgia 63-51. Tennessee beat the breaks off Arkansas 76-52. Mississippi State annihilated South Carolina 85-50. Vandy beat LSU on the road 80-72. A&M at home beat Texas by 20, 80-60. Auburn had no problem with Missouri. Alabama had no problem with Oklahoma. Well, okay. So much for a great day of basketball. The first one was good. Then everybody else flexed their muscle yesterday. That was my takeaway from yesterday.
My takeaway, which we touched on this a little bit last night during our post game show after the Alabama Oklahoma game, was the time slots.
Yes.
And it needs to be changed because, like you said, everyone wants to watch every game this season. And that's really not possible with the way that this layout is, because games are lasting longer than a solid or a strict 2 hours.
Yep. And it used to be like the games would go like 2 hours on the nose, maybe 2:05. And I don't know why it gets extended out now to 2:15, 2:20. And I'm sure a lot of people will say it's because of commercials or things like that. But, we maximize our timeouts. We have a lot of reviews at the table with the referees, which it doesn't bother me. Usually it's something important in the game that I'm excited about the review. I want to see the review. I don't know why these games are dragging out. Maybe with the metrics, we're fouling more at certain times. I don't know, but we should slot each window to be 2 hours and 30 minutes. And that way, I'd love to get a little post game soundbite on before I have to switch to the next game. And I'd love to get a little build up for the next game too. But they haven't called and said, "Hey Jim, you want to run ESPN?" They haven't called that. So
Shocker.
a shocker. All right, coming up this week though, I believe it's Tuesday, right? For Auburn, South Carolina. Is
Yes.
that Tuesday? And then
Auburn,
Bama's,
Texas.
excuse me, yeah, Auburn in Texas. And then for Alabama, it's Alabama and South Carolina, and that's Wednesday, I believe. So we'll have post game shows via the StreamYard, the format you're seeing, but they'll be live right after both of those contests, a short period of time to give you to react. We'll do that all season long. It's brought to you at this point in the season by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag, promo code next round. MyBookie AG, promo code next round gets you in the game. Great discount on your deposit bonus. Also by our friends at roback.com, promo code TNR20. Get 20% off all your hoodies, your golf gear. Great gift for the family members as we get ready for a fun spring and summer. And great wear for the men and women as well. The women in your life, some great gear that I know you've experienced, Little T, as well. So
I
that's our
have.
sponsors. And let's go to the mailbag. What do you have for us tonight, T?
Okay, so this first question, which I'm very, very interested to get your take on this. Dunaway hasn't heard any of these questions yet, or I haven't presented them to him. So these are going to be instant reaction.
Okay.
How long before we have a statue of Johni Broome at Auburn? So, surface level is the question. Yes, he's in all the headlines right now. He's currently the leader for the Namath Player of the Year. But I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, so the statue that's outside of Neville Arena right now is Charles Barkley, who you know very well. We love Charles Barkley. So I was like, we should do a little comparison. So I pulled some stats, but before I present any evidence, initial reaction.
I was thinking what Janai would have to do to get a statue. On the football side, you have Sullivan, Bo, and Cam. They all three won the Heisman. So I think being National Player of the Year, which Janai is the favorite to be right now, I think if he was the National Player of the Year, that would get him a statue. After that, I think it would take to get a statue now, not number retired in the jersey in the Raptors or anything. After that, I think it would take winning a national championship. So either Player of the Year or National Champion would get him a statue. And then in Charles Barkley's case, he went on to be at the time one of the top 50 NBA players of all time. Now that will adjust over time, but when it was done at the end of last century, he was one of the top 50 NBA players of all time. And Charles has also given millions of dollars back to Auburn. So it would take something like that. He'd either have to win a national championship, win the National Player of the Year, or go on to the NBA and have a top 50 NBA like career to get a statue. Next statue going up outside of Neville Arena will be Bruce Pearl. That is a given. It'll be easy. Whether he wants to go the Pearl entrance at the arena, if the Nevilles want to pay to take Neville off of it and make it Pearl
Give
Arena.
him the arena. Give him the
Yeah,
arena.
I agree. I mean, the Nevilles, they put their name on it. They're great donors for Alabama, but I mean for Auburn. But they love Auburn, and I think they love Bruce Pearl. And I think the Nevilles would gladly, um, probably, I don't say this with somebody else's, but they probably would take their name off the arena. If not, is the court named after anybody yet there? If not, Bruce Pearl Court.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean Bruce Pearl Court, playing on the Pearl Court, and maybe that'll be it. But Bruce Pearl will get a statue 100%, and Janai will have to get in line behind him. That's my initial reaction.
I agree. I agree because I think that what you said, National Player of the Year, winning a national championship, something like that, yes, something needs to happen. But I started looking at strictly their stat lines, their college stat lines, because that's what we have to compare right now and the accolades that they racked up. But Janai currently is averaging more points per game, more rebounds per game, more assists per game, but Barkley had a better field goal percentage. They both won SEC tournament MVP. They were both voted to be on the All SEC first team, and both received the SEC All Tournament Team Award. So their accolades up to this point are very similar. Obviously, Janai hasn't played in the NBA yet. He hasn't,
Yeah,
that type of
but
stuff you can't compare. But it is kind of crazy in terms of, I know the game has changed and all of that, and Janai played elsewhere before he was at Auburn. Times have changed in college basketball, but it was kind of crazy, the comparison of the two.
yeah, those are, Janai's slightly ahead of those Auburn numbers, and um, you know, impact for Auburn. I think when they were at Auburn, Charles Barkley and Johni Broome are exactly the same. When you go play Auburn, and I even said this post game last night. Remember, I said everyone is wishing away, ready for Auburn and Alabama to play each other twice this year. And I said the one thing Alabama doesn't have is Johni Broome, and he is the difference maker. How Johni plays in those two games will be who wins the basketball game, in my opinion. And Johni Broome's health and ability to continue to put Johni Broome numbers up is whether or not Auburn will be the number one overall seed, whether they'll win a national championship or not. He's that important, and Charles was that important to his teams back in the day too. I believe that Johni has more talent around him, so there's more options for scoring and other things around Johni, and he's still putting up these massive numbers. So just in the Auburn years, I'd put Johni Broome and Charles Barkley on the same line, 100%.
Okay. I agree. I agree. Okay, moving on. I'm gonna let you handle this question because I think that
Okay.
you're gonna have a lot more insight than I will. Will Alabama ever figure out the last possession of the half? It's always Sears waiting until 6 seconds, dribbling around and turning it over. Also, out of bounds plays. We seem to struggle to get the ball in most of the time.
Out of bounds plays has been a strength for Nate Oates. It was not this past weekend and hasn't been at times this year, but it is actually something. If you go back and look, and I don't have the numbers in front of me for this year, but the last since he got to Tuscaloosa, his out of bound plays score frequently. He's known for out of bound designed plays. When you're up in a basketball game like they were on Saturday, and I'm sure in our fandom we're reacting to initially what you saw on Saturday, when you have a lead, the safest, easiest way to have the last possession is for your scorer to dribble the clock out and take a shot. I didn't know it was Mark. I thought it was Philon that was dribbling the timeout and then dished it to Mark for a shot. But um, I that's the safest play. Mark's the guy you want taking the shot. But out of bounds plays, I like what Nate draws up, and I don't know if it was such a blowout on Saturday. I don't know if it didn't work to the person asking the question satisfaction. But I'm usually okay with Nate on out of timeout plays drawn up.
That's fair. Okay, with Pegues, JP Pegues, which again, like it
Mm,
breaks my heart how the season has
yeah.
turned out for him. Out of the rotation, we really need Miles Kelly to perform. He had 32 minutes yesterday and only 6 points. What parts of his game does he need to improve to be a contributor? And I will say this, he's been dealing with a wrist injury. So,
Shooting
per,
wrist.
yes. So, percentage wise, I wouldn't really know what number to put on it, like as in terms of health, if he's 80% healthy, 90% healthy. If it was bad enough to where they thought it was having a serious negative impact on his play, I don't think that he would be playing. I think that they would be resting him. And I think there was talk about what game before their last non-conference game, Mammoth. I don't know how to say that team's
Yeah.
name.
Monmouth.
Monmouth.
Yep.
I think there was a little talk about potentially sitting him, but I'm just gonna leave my response to this question at that. He is dealing with an injury, and I don't think that we've seen his best yet.
From our first episode of this show, the basketball show, how much I like Miles Kelly. He's the guy that's exceeded my expectations. What can he do better in that lineup? Score more. But when you've got Janai yesterday, let me see, 24, Chad 13, Cheney had 13, Denver had 10, Pettiford had 10. Um, you only score 84, and I say only score 84. I mean, when you start adding all those up, if you go five deep in double figures, you start running out of points. So I would say you don't judge a guy's contribution. Um, you don't judge a guy's contribution by just total points. He played that many minutes, and I consider him a really good defender. And sometimes you're on the basketball court as a defender and a scorer. And I like Miles's defense out on the perimeter. Missouri came in as a team that also forces a lot of turnovers. That's how they win basketball games. And I think Miles does a good job of protecting the basketball, playing secure with the basketball. So you can do a lot of things that help other people score and prevent your opponent from scoring without scoring point. And I think Miles has done a really good job of that so far.
So I was about to try and look and see what his plus minus was last night, but I'll I'll agree with what you had to say on that one. This is kind of along the same lines. Was surprised that Houston Mallette didn't see much playing time. Thoughts, and I feel like this should be brought up. He was supposed to redshirt. The initial plan for Nate Oates was to redshirt him this year until Latrell Wrightsell got hurt. Correct?
Yeah, it was. And he
Okay.
he did the honorable thing. And I talked to his father after a game that Nate called, they were all on the call and said, Wrightsel's out for the year. Here's what we want to do. They were in Vegas. Here's what we want to do. We want to pull the red shirt, but we're not going to do it unless you both agree to it. And they both said, all in. We're all in. And Nate explained, there's limited minutes, but there are minutes. And I think what you will see is there will be certain matchups. In fact, I don't think I know this. There are certain matchups where Mo Diabate will get more minutes and Mallette will not. And then there are games where Mallette will get more minutes and Mo Diabate will not. That is because of the matchups. And yesterday, because of the defense, they wanted to play on Fears, the Oklahoma scorer, who went, I believe, 0-8 when Mo Diabate was on him. I don't think he scored a field goal when Mo was covering him. That's why Mo got a lot more minutes. And I believe Mallette, certain matchups, Mallette will be in there. He is he's a guy that can shoot the basketball as well. But when it comes sometimes to defensive matchups, it's just like in the Auburn situation. If you want to knock Miles for having 6, well, look what everybody else has. And yesterday you had Sears with 22, Nelson with 12, Labaron with 16. Big Cliff had 10 yesterday. You just end up, sometimes it's not your night to get all the minutes when you're playing 8, 9, 10, 11 deep. And that's the way it's going to be all year for Mallette and for Mo Diabate. There'll be games you'll sit here and you'll go, man, did Mo Diabate play tonight? Yeah, he played 4 minutes. And then you'll be like, man, Mo Diabate's awesome tonight, playing 18 minutes. And then Mallette will be the same way. It's just matchups and the way it pieces together.
And I remember, I think it was the first game after it had been announced that they pulled his red shirt. He was one of the players available to the media after the game. And during the press conference, he was obviously asked about it. And he said the coaching staff thought that this was what was best for the team. And that's what my interest is what's best for the team. So if that's what they think is best, then yeah, I might play 6 minutes a game. I might play 2 minutes a game. He played 19 minutes versus North Dakota. That's his biggest game in terms of minutes on the court. But he just seems like a team player. I mean, I don't know the guy
Yep.
personally, but it seems like his interest is what's best for the team. And what more could you ask for from a teammate and a player from a coaching staff perspective?
Yeah, and I will tell you, watching the season go, Mo Wagi was there last night. Mohamed Wagi, who was on
Mm-hmm.
the Alabama team last year. He got his not national championship, but his Final Four ring pregame. Anybody who's coming back that was on the team last year hadn't gotten their ring yet. They're doing a little ceremony right before tip, right after the national, or right before the national anthem. And welcome back to Coleman Coliseum, Mo Wagi. And there were games last year when Wagi, I think 3 times he led the team in rebounds and was so big at certain points of the season. You may be only a piece to the puzzle for a championship type season. And I think that's the role that you will get from, Chaney Johnson, who's starting to play a lot more, but, sort of the role Dylan played last year. Dylan's minutes were way up down there. Chaney's minutes are way up, but there'll be a role player that'll come in. You'll be like, dadgummit, that guy is helping Auburn. He's not going to play every night, not going to get the same minutes every night, but he helped Auburn win tonight. Same way with Mallette and Mo Diabate in Tuscaloosa.
Okay. Staying on the Alabama train for one more right here. I'd like to know what you both think about the difference in Alabama's defense from last year to this year. Seems better, but the defense is still just 40th in the country according to KenPom. Seems like it's difficult for Bama to really hold people to low numbers with the amount of extra. The question said positions given up because of offensive philosophy.
Yeah. Extra possessions is what he's
That's
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I figured. It was a little bit of a typo.
Um, well, that was a good part of yesterday. Alabama had 25 second chance points, so they hit the boards really well, and they scored 56 points in the paint, and they out rebounded Oklahoma. So not a lot of second chance points for Oklahoma yesterday, but it has been a problem. It is not the Nate Oats defense that you had in his first few years, 100%. It is light years better than last year so far, mainly because you have Cliff on the backside there. But as we've discussed now in every show that we've done, which is 3, that Cliff sometimes isn't as mobile as he needs to be, and that has on switch offs and things like that, that has caused some problems. But I really love what Alabama's able to do with Stevens. Um, when you get him and his length, he was on Fears a lot. The guy's 7 feet tall, but he can guard the perimeter. Grant Nelson is 6'11". He can guard the perimeter. Does a great job guarding guards. They disrupt great shooters, great twos and threes on the other team with their length and their ability to play defense. And, you know, this year, Grant's able to go out there. Jarrett's able to go out there, and Cliff is sort of holding down the fort down in the middle. Sherelle didn't play a lot yesterday. I think he's going to be a really good defender as well. So I think the defense is a work in progress. When you play that many players, though, it's not going to be what it was when you had a rotation of 7 or 8, because you just don't have the same continuity you have with 11 guys that you would have with 8 guys. So there, it's you got to know what, if I'm zigging, you're zagging, and we're not bumping into each other and we're switching off here, we're doing that. Communication when you play that many players can be a problem. Auburn's playing that many players though, and they've got it dialed in. Their team defense is where it's at right now. They are. It's why I consider them the best team in the country, because they can do it scoring, they can do it defensively. Tennessee can score some points. I don't think to Auburn's level, and Tennessee's known for their defense as well. That's why both those teams are 1 and 2 in whatever poll you want to look at or whatever metrics you want to look at, because they can score, but they play brilliant defense.
Well, last season, and the Ken Palm numbers that I looked at were from the end of last season. So it's the totality of, every game they played. We're very early in the season right now, but to end last season, Alabama was ranked 111th according to Ken Palm's adjusted defensive efficiency. Right now they're
Yeah.
43rd. Last season they allowed 81.2 points per game. Right now they're allowing 77.2. So there is improvement over the year. And
Yeah.
it's very early. They're
They
young
they
guys, they're transfer portal pieces. So everyone's still, meshing.
they lost 11 games last year in the regular season, remember, in the SEC tournament. So 11 games before they got to the NCAA tournament. And they lost that amount of games because of their defense, mostly, in my opinion. They ended up 111th, you said. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they played about as the 43rd, where they are right now, defense in the NCAA tournament. I think they played better defense in their run to the Final Four. And that's why they made the run to the Final Four. Situational defense. Just think back to the great, run and shoot teams of BYU, early Chip Kelly at Oregon in football, Cam Newton at Auburn 2010. Sometimes your offense is so good that it can overcome at times mediocre defense, and you can still win a championship. And if Alabama holds in the 40s, maybe gets a little tick better, they score it well enough usually to win big basketball games.
Labaron, Philon, and Tahaad Pettiford, who has the higher ceiling? Which, I mean, I'm no NBA scout, and I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's what this means, is because that's where their futures all lie.
Okay, I'll ask
Well,
you a question then.
okay.
You tell me, because you've seen Todd in person more than I have. How is Tahaad at creating his space for a shot? Is he knocking down shots mostly because of good ball movement and he's hitting open shots, or is he able to create the space and make his shot? Because LeBaron Philon is able to create space or get to the rim and make his shots. And I think Philon will play in the NBA. So now you tell me about Pettiford, because I know that Philon can create space to make his shot. Does Pettiford do that? Is he good at getting off guys to make his shot?
Yeah, I think he's very talented with the ball in his hands. He's had a little bit of a turnover. I don't want to call it a turnover issue, but he's turned the ball over a decent amount. He's turned the ball over more than anyone else on Auburn's roster. He's good with the ball in his hands. That is, a concern, and I'm sure they're working on improving that. But I think where the biggest difference in the two is defensively. Tahaad has struggled a little bit on defense. He's gotten into foul trouble a few times this season, and I think that he has a lot of room to grow defensively. And I think we talked about this last night, I believe. LeBaron's great defensively.
Yeah, I think Philon's right up there with the best defenders on the team. And, you know, if you're an NBA scout, you wish Philon was 3 inches taller, right? You wish
That's well,
Mark Sears was 3 inches taller.
and Tahaad's only 6'1",
Yeah,
so he's
yeah.
small.
6'1" though is good enough. When you're 5'10" and you're lying and saying you're 6 feet, like I do,
Well, I mean,
that's not good in the
that's
NBA.
that's what ESPN told me, and they
Yeah,
told me that Labaron is 6'4". So
yeah. Philon's got the height. He's
yeah,
6'7" now, because if you go look and see what Steph Curry is, I think Steph Curry is probably in that 6'4" neighborhood too. I think Philon will play at the next level. We'll see about Pettiford, but he got a great shot and is a great addition to this Auburn team. And I know he's one of your favorites.
he is one of my favorites. He's definitely one of my favorites. We've talked about this a little, and the next two questions are kind of run together. But Bama's a good offensive team, but I still don't think they match up well in comparison to Auburn. Thoughts? I have one thought on this, and it is what you said earlier, Johni Broome. No one has been able, up until this point, no one has been able to stop him.
Yeah, no, I mean he basically hits more than half his shots when he takes them. It seems like he can shoot them outside and inside. But he's a great defender too, and he's a team leader. Um, I mean, Alabama's defense has to get better because defense travels, and sometimes you can have a bad scoring night. And it started off that way at North Dakota, right? When they were playing lowly North Dakota, they were having a hard time to score the basketball, and they had to get on their giddy up just to get out of there with a win. And so, Auburn's consistency, even in their loss, has been really good defense. It is hard for the other team to breathe against Auburn. So, just like Bruce said Saturday, I think we're good enough to win on the road. I think we're good enough to lose on the road. And he said, you heard what I said, right? He says, because the SEC is that tough. Well, it's the same way for Alabama. They're good enough to go beat anybody, but they're also good enough to lose at home to anybody because of this league. And what they don't have right now at their disposal is a top 10 defense that if they go through a scoring drought that can keep them close in a game. What they do have is an elite offense that can make up for that if the scoring is there. I mean, Alabama still isn't. They did not shoot the three ball. They scored 107 yesterday and didn't shoot the three ball very well at all. So, um, if when they get hot, and they do some games, that when they do, they're unbeatable at that point. If they're hot against Auburn, here in Tuscaloosa or at Neville Arena, if they hit their threes, if they shoot, the outrageous 45% from three, they'll have a chance to win the game. Problem is, Auburn guards the perimeter so well, I don't even know how many 3-pointers they'll be able to get up in that game. That's how good Auburn's defense is. And Alabama's defense isn't quite to that point yet. Yesterday, they did a good job, though, against an Oklahoma team that had a really super freshman in Fears, and they never let him get into the game. And that was because of the defense they drew up.
I believe Alabama's depth of scores is what will give them an upper hand against Auburn. There are a lot of people excited about the Auburn Alabama matchup, which we're over a month away from the first and over 2 months away from the second. But we'll talk about it if that's what the people want to talk about.
Yeah.
How do y'all see February 15th going, which will be the first time that they play in Tuscaloosa? And
I don't know. You tell me. How do you see it going?
so what I grabbed onto from this question was the depth of scorers. Prince Albert was the person that asked this question, and that was what the question started off with. Was I believe Alabama's depth of scorers is what will give them an upper hand. We've talked about how electric they are on offense. They can put up numbers. And so I started looking at statistics because, numbers don't lie. And Alabama has 4 players, Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, Labaron Philon, and Aiden Holloway, that are averaging double-digit points per game. Latrell Wrightsell was as well. He's out for the season with an injury. So they had 5, lost him. Auburn currently has 5, Janai, Chad, Tahaad, Denver, and Cheney. So the depth of scoring, I don't know if that will necessarily be an upper hand or an advantage for either team because they both have a number of guys that can hit shots. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I do agree. And when you talk about depth, it is a huge advantage for Alabama. Um, Probably against anybody in the league except for Auburn, who's got a tremendous depth, and it's a huge advantage for them against anybody in the league except Alabama. Because I don't think Kentucky runs as deep as Auburn and Alabama does. I don't believe Florida runs as deep as Alabama and Auburn. I know Arkansas doesn't. Mississippi State's built a little differently, way they do their X's and O. You talk about a great defense. Watch Mississippi State play defense. You'll love them. Tennessee, I don't think they have the depth as Alabama and Auburn has either. So I think when it's all said and done, that depth of scoring that Alabama has will be matched by what Auburn has. Because you start looking, okay, if uh if Broome can score 20 something, Sears can score 20 something. Okay, who's next? Well, usually it's Grant Nelson and Chad Baker Mazzara, right? Okay, who's next? Well, it's Labaron Philon, and who's hot that night? Is it Pettiford? Is it Denver Jones? Is it Miles Kelly hitting threes? And then you go down, who's next? And you go down the list, and you look across the line, and it's like, okay, I've got a gun and I'm pointing at somebody else who has a gun, and it's a gunfight, right? Everybody's got what, and on down the line, everybody's got that person on the other side. Um, and right now, Auburn's defense is better, but scoring wise, it'll be a heck of a game. But, can Alabama score like that against an elite defense? That's what we'll be talking about on February 15th, I think.
Okay, to wrap it up, after opening SEC home game wins for both Auburn and Alabama, what do you see as an area of concern for both teams in their opening road games this week? As Dunaway said earlier, Auburn will play at Texas on Tuesday, and Alabama will play at South Carolina on Wednesday, and it will be a Nick Pringle reunion, my favorite player from last year's team.
Yeah. Let's go Alabama first. South Carolina scored 50 yesterday on the road at Mississippi State against that Chris Jans defense. 50. They had 18 first half points. Alabama won't throw that kind of defense at South Carolina, but Alabama should be able to control a South Carolina team that is 74 in the Ken Palm, 92 in the net. It'll be about this team, the young players like Philon, playing well on the road in Columbia. Jim, you're not used to true road game. Alabama struggled at North Dakota, true road game. Lost at Purdue, true road game. So you've got to get over the hump of winning true road games. It's not neutral site. It's not a home game. So basketball is built. It's the best home court advantage sport. More than football, more than baseball. It's the best home court advantage, home atmosphere, home advantage is in college basketball, and you got to overcome that. For Auburn and Texas, Texas, they played at Texas A&M and got beat 80-60. The game was close till about the 14-minute mark, but they too were on the road at College Station. They've got Tremont Mark, who scored 14 in that game. Trey Johnson is their big 3-point shooter. He was 0 for 5 from 3 because A&M's defense got in him and he didn't handle the road very well. Texas will have a great environment, but Auburn is up here and Texas is down here. You don't get to either one of these teams, Texas and South Carolina, when you're talking about the upper half of the league. So I think it's both really good ways to start the road season after home wins, to go on the road, and you should get W's here. It's the next three after that that should interest you, right? Because then you come back for the weekend. Auburn's at South Carolina, easy win. Then they host Mississippi State, which they should win at Neville, but it'll be a great Chris Jans reunion. Remember, Jans in Auburn's Final Four year was the head coach at New Mexico State and almost beat Auburn in round one. They survived that game, I think went to overtime and went on to the Final Four. He's a defensive genius. So that's in, midweek game 2 weeks. And then they're at Georgia. Auburn should win that one. Meanwhile, for Alabama, they leave South Carolina. They're on the road at College Station, top 15 team. They've got Ole Miss at home with a Final Four coach, top 25, top 30 like team. Then they're on the road at Kentucky.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah, next three after these, it should be Bama and Auburn should be both 2-0 after this game Tuesday and Wednesday. Then we go to the weekend, and then if Auburn should come out 5-0 after that 3-game span, we'll see where Alabama is after that. That's 3 challenging games against some defensive minds at A&M, Ole Miss, and then a guy Mark Pope in Kentucky who wants to play exactly the way Nate Oats likes to play. Man, shoot those threes and let's go play defense.
Yeah, it's things are about to get interesting. That's for sure.
Yep. Well, this is the basketball show, and so now you've got a sample of what we're going to do all season long. We do this show that will drop on Sunday nights to sort of reflect on what we saw, total mailbag, and look ahead a little bit to the games ahead. Available for you on Sunday nights or Monday morning for your drive in. After every game, like we did yesterday, we'll have post game reaction. If it's a doubleheader on Saturday, sometimes we'll have 2 shows. Sometimes we'll just have one if they're jammed close together, like they were this past Saturday. And then midweek, Thursday night, Friday morning, Thursday night, we'll do it. It'll drop Thursday night. You can absorb it on Friday morning or Saturday morning on your way to the game. However you want to do that, we'll do another episode of these. Always open for your comments. We appreciate those so much, and we appreciate mybookie.ag, promo code next round, and our friends at roback.com, promo code TNR20. Final thought, little T, what you got?
I'm just
Anything?
excited. My final thought is that I'm excited. There are going to be entertaining games every night that games are being played.
Yep.
And the non-conference schedule was at times I mean, it's all fun, but there are obviously games that are going to be a lot more entertaining than others. And the hype around playing, another elite team, it's just more exciting. It's more fun to watch when you go into it really having no clue what's going to happen when you're playing some of these, inferior opponents, mid-major opponents. It's not quite as exciting. And we're about to have a stretch of 18 games of you never know what's going to happen. Anyone can be anyone on any given night. So I'm just excited for the next few weeks, next few months.
Yeah, me too. And as I told you on our way to the stadiums yesterday, as we were driving, I said, I just hope Auburn and Alabama keeps winning so they can keep, you know, putting that February 15th date. It'd be great if they both were undefeated in conference play when Auburn and Alabama met, or at least still were really good records, highly ranked, because it would be it's going to be a fantastic show anyway. But the higher they are in the national rankings, the more fun we'll have this year for sure. That's the basketball show, the weekend version. That's Taylor Corn. I'm Jim Dunaway. Thank you for being with us, and let's hoop it up.
Let's hoop it up.